Today I'll be interviewing my brother Michael Rabitsky and asking him some questions about what it's like to work for himself. Could you please describe what your business is?
Yeah, so I make custom furniture and sculpture. So that can range from anything dealing with wood or metal, even all the way to concrete and sterling silver. Lots of my work is furniture based and kind of standard. Your tables, your consoles, credenzas, that sort of thing. And on the far end of that scope is completely sculptural and ornamental things. Anything from actual artwork to uh, ceremonial mace for a university to use during their commencement ceremonies. So really broad range there, but anything that needs to be handmade and crafted in kind of the old world techniques.
And so, how would you describe your average day?
So my average day, I'll wake up and I try and ease into it. I don't like to go straight into the studio and do kind of intense forging or anything really physical right away. So I'll try and answer some emails or do some design work if that's relevant to what I'm working on at the time. But for me, it's kind of hard to just wake up and jump straight into it. The exception being if I've been really pushing the envelope and kind of getting close to a deadline, then I'm kind of energized all the time and go straight into the studio. But generally, I try and do something computer-based first.
And how, since you mentioned computer-based, how is your design process and what do you go through to get to what you're building?
So I've been trying to use some online drafting resources, Google SketchUp, that sort of thing, as well as Rhino, 3D modeling software for 3D printing. I don't find that it's as conducive to the sort of design process I like necessarily. It's good for once you have an actual idea that you're doing, because then you can tweak little things about it, and it's very kind of professional looking to show to a client. But I actually, for my design process, I much prefer to work in sketchbooks and actually draw things. Just to get the basic idea down, and then after that, I tend to do actual physical sketching, model making, with actual components like wood and metal to work things out in 3D. Because of all the work, for the most part, that I do is three-dimensional, it really helps me to actually manipulate materials and go through that whole process. But it can really range, whether or not I'm working with a client for a piece or if I'm doing one of my own personal projects to have to show to people. It really, then I'm only concerned with, what I feel, where my inspiration is coming from. But if I'm working with a client, then it's really important to sit down with the client and see what their vision is, what they're expecting, and sitting down face to face is really the best for that. That way, as they're talking to me, I can sketch things out, make sure that I'm headed in the same direction that they are. Pick up on keywords that they, are thinking about and envisioning, looking at any source material they might have, whether it's their own sketches or, things that they've seen that are similar, texture samples, photos of colors, anything like that. So it can really range between what project I'm working on.
And how have you built your customer base then?
That's the most challenging part for a small business like mine. I don't have the greatest name recognition in the world. Things that can help with that are trade shows or design fairs, having a booth at them and showing my own work or entering into design competitions. But besides that, going out and meeting people in my industry, people who do similar things or interior designers is really helpful. Some of the biggest work and some of the biggest clients I've had have actually been referred to me by colleagues or friends that I have that also work in similar ways, but the material that the client was looking for wasn't something that they're comfortable with, or just completely something they don't do because they were a woodworker and they needed a metal worker. So that has been great. So getting the references to interior designers, and then a lot of the clients that I've had in the past have actually referred me to other people, friends of theirs, or businesses that they're working in partnership with. For example, I worked with the lead manager of a interior finishing contractor, and he was actually generous enough to refer me to one of their clients that they were finishing an office
Mm-hmm.
for. So, it can really range, but getting out there and making a lot of contacts in your field is very important.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult for me.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily in my personality type to go out and talk to a bunch of people and make those contacts, but they really are very important.
Mm-hmm. And going back to your average day, how many hours would you say you work on a typical day?
Ideally, I try and aim for about 9. It can be a little hard to start sometimes. Sometimes I have to clean things up and move things around in the studio. The challenging thing with my business is because I work in so many different mediums, I have a lot of varied equipment and maybe not the best amount of storage space for it. So,
Mm-hmm.
yesterday I was working on concrete and cutting and polishing and mixing. I have to put a lot of that stuff away, and then pull out my woodworking stuff or pull out my welder. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of shuffling that happens. So, an 8-hour day usually isn't quite enough. I usually end up working 9 or 10-hour days. Sometimes if I'm coming up on a hard deadline and maybe I'm a little bit behind, or maybe the process didn't go smoothly because a blade broke or I hit a nail buried in some wood, then I might have to work 12 hours, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And what made you want or decide that you wanted to work for yourself?
The biggest thing that pushed me towards working for myself was having worked for other people's companies, and maybe bored isn't the right word, but just not being fully engaged by doing the same thing all the time. So, for example, I worked for a company based out of Whitewater, Wisconsin, and I was their product photographer. And my goal for every 8-hour work shift was to shoot 400 images of product and edit all 400 images a day. So obviously that's pretty challenging. That's pretty tight. That's a couple seconds per image that you're trying to get that done in.
Mm-hmm.
So that gets very monotonous after a time. And you do get very good at certain things, and you can streamline the process, but it just, there's only so much kind of captivating energy there for me.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't very engaged by it after a certain point. So with running my own business, I have to wear a lot of hats. So I'm the design person, I'm the marketing guy, I have to reach out to new clients, I have to go meet with new clients, I have to go pick up materials, I have to clean the shop, I have to maintain the machinery, I have to do the actual labor of making the product. So everything's always changing. It's very rare that, Tuesday looks like Monday, and, Monday looks like what I was doing on Friday. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of change happens, and that's both a good and a bad thing. It's kind of hard sometimes to be very productive when things are changing all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also very interesting, and it keeps my attention.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the sacrifices that you had to make to work for yourself?
The biggest sacrifice would be the amount of hours I have to work, and sort of the strange hours that I sometimes have to work. So because I'm a one-man shop, sometimes if I do fall behind with a deadline, I'm always trying to meet them no matter what. So that might end up being a 14-hour day. And a lot of times I have to work on the weekends, all day Sunday or something, and work really late. So it can take a toll on your personal relationships, be it your friendships or, my relationship with my wife. It's hard to do all things at once really well. So, hopefully that'll start to even out as I either gain more clients and I can kind of schedule things better in the future, or as I, start to do repeats of projects, maybe make the same type of thing more than once. I'm kind of trying to work my way into that and have sort of a signature line of things that I make that clients can request. Maybe the dimensions will vary a little bit, or the color, maybe wood species will change a little bit, but I'm kind of starting to repeat some of the same designs, and that help smooth things out. I can kind of have a better idea of exactly how long something will take, kind of smooth out the whole process.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for the interview, and thank you for the time you've put into this and all the insight you've given me.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck.
Yep. Bye. I learned quite a bit through this interview. I learned definitely that starting your own business can take a toll on many things. You need to be fully immersed into it and believe in what you're doing, and that it does take a lot of time, and there are things that you will have to sacrifice, like your time. Like he said, sometimes he would like to spend time with his friends or his wife, but instead he would have to work because sometimes he had a deadline that would come up, and he would have to work maybe more than those 9 hours that he tries to shoot for every day. Um, uh, since he's my brother, I personally know that he's had to work before 14-hour days, and it can be quite a bit, but he does enjoy what he's doing, and I think that's what the whole idea of being an entrepreneur is that you enjoy what you're doing, and that's the reason you want to start your own business, because you want to do what you love and let other people see what you're doing, and give them joy through your work. And especially what he does is very hands-on, and uh, the stuff that he does is there's not a lot of people out there right now anymore that do this type of things. And so definitely I've learned that it takes a lot of time, and it's not that easy always. And like one of the other things he said was that he would have to sometimes outreach to customers and other people, like other people and contacts and stuff like that, and that's not necessarily in his personality, and he doesn't always feel comfortable with. But as so starting your own business, you have to get out of your comfort zone and do things that you normally wouldn't, and spread your name, because otherwise you, like he was saying, like it's pretty hard. So getting your name out there and getting recognized, you get more and more clients, and that's how you build up a steady business. So I definitely learned that from that, and I mean, just knowing that it's definitely not easy. Work sometimes, thinking people think I think that like starting your own business, it can be easy. It can be if you're lucky and very successful right from the beginning. But like he was saying, he had to work those he shoots for 9 hour days, but usually it's way more than that, and that you have to put all your time and effort practically into it just to get started.